Alright, hello everybody. So this is time for chapter 13 of Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East. Emil Jast and I started out later in the day to go to the temple and arrived there the next day at 5:30 in the evening. We found two elderly men in charge and I was made comfortable for the night. The temple is located on a high mountain peak. It's built of rough stone and is said to be over 12,000 years old. It is in perfect state of preservation and repair. It is one of the first temples erected by the Siddha teachers and was erected by them as a place where they could go and have perfect silence. It is on the highest peak in that part of the mountains. The elevation above sea level is 10,900 feet, and it is over 5,000 feet above the valley floor. The last 7 miles, it seemed to me the trail was straight up. At times, it led over poles that were supported by ropes fastened to boulders above, then thrown over the cliffside, and these supported the poles that served as a trail. As we walked over the poles, I realized that there were at least 600 feet these were at least 600 feet in midair. At other times, we were obliged to climb pole ladders supported by ropes from above. The last ascent was perpendicular for about 300 feet, and it was accomplished wholly by pole ladders. When we arrived, I felt as if I were on top of the world. We were up before the sun the next morning, and when I stepped out on the roof of that temple, I forgot all about the ascent of the night before. The temple was so situated at the edge of a bluff that when you looked out, you could see nothing for 3,000 feet below, and it seemed as if the whole temple was suspended in midair. I had considerable difficulty persuading myself to believe otherwise. In the distance, we could see 3 mountains, upon which I was told temples similar to this were located, but they were so distant I could not make out the temples with my field glasses. Emil said that one of the other parties should have reached the temple on the farthest mountain at about the same time that we arrived here last evening, and that our chief was in the party. He said that if I wished to communicate with him, I might do so, as they were at the time standing on the roof of the temple a good deal like we were doing. I took my notebook and wrote that I was standing on the roof of the temple 10,900 feet above sea level, and it seemed to me as if the temple were suspended in midair. That the time was exactly 4:55 a.m. by my watch, and the day was Saturday, August 2nd. Emil read the message and stood silent a moment. Then the answer came. Time, 5:01 a.m. by my watch. Place, suspended in midair, 8,400 feet above sea level. Date, Saturday, August 2nd. View, wonderful, but situation, most remarkable. Then Emil said, if you wish, I will take this note and bring the answer when I return. I would like to go and converse with those at the temple, if you do not mind. I gave him the note willingly, and he disappeared. In 1 hour and 45 minutes, he returned with a note from the chief stating that Emil had arrived there at 5:16 a.m., and that they were having a wonderful time speculating as to what would come next. We stayed at the temple 3 days. During that time, Emil visited the other parties, carried notes for me, and returned with answers from them. The morning of the 4th day, we prepared to return to the village where we had left my associates. I found that Emil and Jast wished to go to another small village located in the valley about 30 miles from where our trail left the valley trail. I suggested that we go, and I accompany them. We camped that night at a shepherd's lodge, and were up and started early next morning in order to reach our destination before dark the next day. As we were walking, we were not able to use horses on the trip to the temple, and so had left them at the village. About 10 o'clock that morning, there came on a heavy electric storm, and it looked as if there would be a downpour, but no rain fell. The country through which we were passing was quite heavily wooded, and the ground was covered with a heavy, thick, dry grass. The country seemed exceptionally dry. The lightning ignited the grass in a number of places, and before we knew it, we were virtually surrounded by a forest fire. In a few moments, this fire was raging like mad and closing in upon us from three sides with the swiftness of an express train. The smoke was settling down in thick clouds, and I became bewildered and panic-stricken. Emil and Jas seemed cool and collected, and this reassured me somewhat. They said, there are two ways of escape. One is to try to get to the next creek, where there is water flowing through a deep canyon. If we can reach this canyon, which is about 5 miles away, we can, in all probability, make ourselves safe until the fire has burned itself out. The other way is to go on through the fire with us, if you can trust us to take you through. Instantly, all fear left me, as I realized that these men had proved true in all emergencies. Throwing myself, as it were, wholly upon their protection, I stepped between them and proceeded on our way. It seemed to be in the direction of the fire, and it seemed to be in the direction the fire was raging most. Then immediately it seemed as if a great archway opened before us, and we went on directly through that fire, without the least inconvenience, either from smoke or heat, and from the burning brands strewn along the trail under our feet. There were at least 6 miles of this fire-swept area that we passed through. It seemed to me as if we were calmly walking along that trail as though there were no fire raging around us. This went on until we crossed a small stream, and then we were out of the fire. While we were going through the fire, Emil said to me, "Can you not see how easy it is to use God's higher law to replace a lower one when you really need the higher? We have now raised the vibrations of our bodies to a higher vibration than that of the fire. Therefore, the fire does not harm us." If senses mortal could see us now, they would think we had disappeared, when in reality, our identity is as it has always been. In reality, we actually see no difference. It is the concept of the mortal senses that loses contact with us. Could they have seen us as we are? No doubt they would think we had ascended. In reality, that is what happens. We do ascend to a plane of consciousness where the mortal does lose contact with us. All can do the same as we are doing. We are using a law given us by the Father to use. We are able to use this law to convey our bodies through any space. We simply overcome difficulties by raising our consciousness above them, and in this way we are able to overcome or to come up over all limitations that man in mortal consciousness has placed upon himself. To me, it had seemed as though we were going over the ground with our feet just touching it. When we were safe across the stream, out of the fire, my first impression was that I had awakened from a deep sleep and had dreamed this. But I gradually awoke to the realization of it all, and the real meaning of it began to dawn upon my consciousness. We found a shady place on the bank of the stream, ate our lunch, and rested for an hour. We then went on to the village. Guys and gals, I cannot think of a better chapter to have read during this time, and it just so happened to be chapter 13, when all of the fear pandemic currently gripping the United States broke out on Friday, March the 13th. Then I read this passage, and I'll read it again because it's a paragraph long and it's perfect for this time that we are living in. While we were going through the fire, Emil said to me, "Can you not see how easy it is to use God's higher law to replace a lower one when you really need the higher? Well, I think there's no doubt about it that right now the law that we really do need is the higher law. We have now raised the vibrations of our bodies to a higher vibration than that of the fire. Therefore, the fire does not harm us. The fire is analogous to the fear pandemic that is currently gripping the United States and most places in the world that have been affected by the Wuhan virus. Raising your personal vibration is the best defense, not only against contracting said virus, but from being affected by the fear and the prisoner's dilemma that is currently gripping the United States. And what is the prisoner's dilemma? The prisoner's dilemma is the thing that causes you to go out and buy a ton of emergency supplies during this time because everyone else is doing it. Otherwise and normally, you would not go out and purchase 2 weeks, 1 month, 3 months worth of toilet paper or food supplies to last you for a month. But you do it because everybody else is doing it and because you don't want to be left without anything should you really need it. This is the prisoner's dilemma. Prisoners, whether it be in an actual legitimate prison or whether it be a prisoner of your own mind, or a prisoner of fear, react to situations as opposed to affording them themselves the luxury of responding to situations. Responding to a situation in this current crisis would have looked like already having your emergency food supplies on hand should the power, the electricity, or those critical infrastructural services had gone down. You could have responded in a way that was favorable to your family and yourself because you were already prepared. That level of preparedness would have been a marker or an indicator of a higher vibrational being because they had the foresight to prepare for this situation before it ever came upon them, thus affording themselves the luxury to remain calm whilst the fire rages around everyone else and them. We're not exempt from the world and the environment around us. People are living in fear. But raising your vibration, doing those simple things, is enough to keep you from being burned. If senses mortal could see us now, they would think we had disappeared, when in reality our identity is as it has always been. In reality, we actually see no difference. It is the concept of the mortal senses that loses contact with us. Could they see us as we are, no doubt they would think we had ascended. In reality, this is what happens. We do ascend to a plane of consciousness where the mortal does lose contact with us. All can do the same as we are doing. This is the same exact thing that Jesus told his disciples when they were curious as to how he was able to do the things that he was able to do. And he says, "Surely unto thee I say, that thou as who stand before me and receiveth the spittle of my mouth shall not only be as I, but I as them. And all these things, and greater, thou shalt do." We are using a law given us by the Father to use. We are able to use the law to convey our bodies through any space. This is the law we are using when you see us appear and disappear, or as you call it, annihilate space. So the lower vibrational law that allows you to come and to go through this physical plane is the process of incarnation through the birthing process. It's the same process, just on a slightly more complex molecular and biological scale as putting a seed in the ground of corn and allowing that corn to grow. Plant the seed in the fertile mother womb energy, and then the masculine calls it forth into creation. Okay? That masculine in this sense of the corn being the sun. So, if you were to use a higher vibrational law, as the masters are describing in this chapter 13, essentially what you would be doing is raising your molecular vibration to a plane where your, for all intents and purposes, and all visual conceptions, your molecular structure remains vibrationally intact to your vision process. Your body appears the same, the world around you more or less appears the same, yet you're vibrating at a higher frequency. Therefore, someone whose visual cortex is only permitting them to see third density energy, that meaning the vibration of planet Earth, they'll lose track of you. They won't be able to see where you've gone or what you look like. But you can still see them, you can still see yourself, and you can still see the world around you. Okay? You vibrate at a higher frequency. You're still aware that you're living on planet Earth, that the world is gripped in pandemic fear, but you're not affected by it. And you go out into the world, and you ride your bike, and you go to the park, and you do these things, and you don't get sick. That is the nature of living in a higher vibrational state. We simply overcome difficulties by raising our consciousness above them, and in this way, we are able to overcome or to come up over all limitations that man in mortal consciousness has placed upon himself. That last line, limitations placed upon him or herself, is prophetic, because if you're living in a state of fear, if you are dramatically affected by this pandemic fear virus that is spread way faster and more detrimentally than the actual Wuhan virus itself, then you have, by conscious choice, chosen to limit your ability to receive higher vibrational energy. Higher vibrational energy is love, and love withstands all fear. So anecdotally, I have not experienced fear in any shape or form whilst this whole thing has been going on. I have experienced concern, but those concerning times, or those thoughts that I had during those times, were times when I was consciously aware that I was allowing my vibrational frequency to lower. And because I was lowering it, it's like a periscope on a submarine. If you pop it up out of the water, you're able to see all the stuff that's going on above the surface of the water. But if you slowly start to ratchet it down, eventually the eye of that periscope is going to be underwater, and your vision will be decreased dramatically, and you'll have no idea of what is around you. That is when fear sets in. When you are ignorant to the true reality of what is happening around you. And the true reality of that is happening around you and me and all people at all times is that everything is very good. Everything always works out for mine, your highest good. In such, if you're able to remain tuned in to that level of frequency, that reality, where everything is very good because it's based on love, you're not afraid of this time. You've got the things that you need to survive. You prepared beforehand. You put away during winter, or you put away during harvest so that you could eat during winter. Whether that's money, whether that's emergency food supplies, whether that's water, whatever it is, you set out to ensure that you would not be caught off guard by some or any natural or man-made events that could limit your access to vital goods. Thus, you were living in a state of love and preparedness while you were doing those preparations, and now, whilst everybody else is living in fear, you are not. Now, on that note, I think the fear level is rapidly dissipating in the United States. I think people are rapidly starting to wrap their mind around this pandemic, this Wuhan Flu threat is not as serious as the media has made it out to be. Is there a threat to immunocompromised individuals, people with underlying health conditions? Is their risk of death higher? Yes, it is. But for individuals who, by all markers and all scientific evaluations, are healthy, you stand a really good chance of recovering from this virus should you get it. Therefore, with that knowledge in place, even if it only serves to make you a little bit less afraid to do things and to live your life, well, that's enough. That's planting a seed. It's planting a seed of love. And I will end by saying that I am not worried about the state of affairs going forward. We are at this kind of all is lost point. At least it seems that way from a lower vibrational perspective. Nonetheless, in the hero's journey, which the planet is on, which you're on, which we're all on, which we can accelerate or postpone and procrastinate on, everything's a choice. We are at that sort of all is lost point where things seem darkest. If you're maintaining a high vibration, you don't subscribe to that. It doesn't seem that dark. Yes, you see the dark energy, but you're not dramatically or negatively affected by it. Okay? And that dark energy is state-sponsored fake news. That dark energy is communism. That dark energy is censorship through big tech. That dark energy is politicians who are self-serving and who serve the agenda of entities that do not have the best interest of the planet or humanity in their agenda or at heart. You recognize all of that stuff. You're able to see it, but it doesn't detrimentally or negatively affect your psyche. It may have hindered your day-to-day life currently if you're quarantining, but think about this in relation to the quarantine. This is the first time on planet Earth when everyone is more or less doing the same thing, which is a beautiful, beautiful reality. Because in all reality, if we are to raise the consciousness of humanity, if we are to be more loving and raise our own individual consciousnesses, yes, the lion's share of that work does fall to you in your own meditations, in your own reflections, in your own personal growth. But at a certain point, if every one of us tunes in, taps in, turns on, and does it together, the effect, which is referred to as the Maharishi effect, will be exponential. And the consciousness of the planet, as well as this human race, will skyrocket. And there will be more love, there will be more abundance, there will be more prosperity, there will be more security, there will be more every single thing that contributes to joy, which is a derivative of love. So therefore, I'm not worried, because we're all basically doing the same exact thing right now. It's like a global timeout. A global time to reflect, a global go to your room timeout type of period. And this is the perfect time to implement new disciplines, new rituals, new spiritual practices, establish stronger bonds with the people that you care about and the people that you love, and to discover parts of your life that you're not going to need anymore, or that you don't want to carry with you anymore, into the other side of this great awakening. Which is probably the coolest part about this whole thing. It's a global timeout. It's a global time to take stock of the things that are in your life, the habits that are in your life, the actions that you habitually take, the thoughts that you habitually think, and to really get a hold of those things. And then discern which pieces you want to carry forward and which pieces you do not want to carry forward, and then thus leave behind. That is a process of raising thy vibration and being more loving. So, with that, I wish you all the happiness in the world. I say namaste to you, which means that the light in me sees the light in you. And if you want to do something to aid in this great awakening, if you want to do something to help with the slowing down of the spread of the fear virus or the Wuhan flu, this is the meditation that I encourage you to use. Imagine that you are an astronaut, or that you just are floating in space. You can view the planet from that perspective and imagine that the sun is rising on the other side of the planet. And those beautiful white, golden, cobalt blue even, fiery red-orange rays of light are cresting the horizon, the surface of the earth. And this is a new day dawning. This is a spiritual awakening. This is love fulfilling its promise that all things are very, very good. And as this sun rises, you don't see the whole ball of light that is the planet. Instead, you see the planet Earth absorbing this light, taking it in as if through funnel or suction or absorption, taking it in, soaking it up, balling it up in the center of the planet. And then this radiant white, golden, cobalt blue light begins its expansion. Now it is expanding from the center of the earth outwards in all directions, all 360 degrees. And it radiates out, and it glows, and it glows, and it glows, and the light is almost blinding. It is just at that point where it is so bright that you can still see the planet Earth. And you see the planet Earth being wrapped in this warm, beautiful, succulent, golden, cobalt blue, white light. That is the healing properties of the universe, of love, of spirit, of source, of God, fulfilling the promise that everything is very good. In this meditation, if you have followed it, if you have envisioned the vision, you have just contributed to the healing of not only those affected by the Wuhan flu, but those who are currently afflicted by any virus, any disease, mentally, psychologically, physically, anything that is plaguing nature, anything that is plaguing humanity, anything that is hurting life in any way. You have just contributed to the pacification of that harmful energy and to the remediation of that energy. Namaste.